I'll step right in front here. Let's see if there's a difference in the color of my shirt. This is my DIY ice cooler air conditioner. But does this thing really work? In today's video, I'll be testing this thing to see just how well it cools. We'll find out how cold the air is coming out, how many hours the ice lasts. I'll use this amp clamp to see just how much power it draws. This thing has a 12-volt power supply, a 270 CFM blower fan with a variable speed control. It uses a 12-volt pump that I've reduced to 5 volts to pump water through the aluminum radiator. This is not a swamp cooler. The air never touches the ice. It pulls air through the vents, inside of the lid, across the radiator, and then it blows it right out of the end. I'll put a link to the build video for this at the end of this video. For my power test today, I'll be using my amp clamp. My power source today is going to be my 22 amp hour jumper pack. First we'll see how many amps the pump draws. I've reduced it from 12 volt to 5 volt, but it seems like it still pumps plenty of water. I'm going to turn my amp clamp on to 40 amps and we're going to switch it to DC. And we have just the pump running, not the fan. So let's see how many amps we're drawing. There we go. 0.27, 0.26, 0.23, 0.24. Looks like we're drawing right around a quarter of an amp. Now that we know that the pump is drawing a quarter of an amp, let's turn it up and see what the total is. Looks like we're right at 4 1/4. So 4 amps is what the motor's drawing. And the nice thing about having the adjustable fan is we can adjust the amps by turning the knob. So how long this will last depends on your battery supply. Our battery supply today is a 22 amp hour lead acid battery, which means we only have about 11 amp hours to use because we have to cut that number in half. So let's do the math. 11 amp hours divided by 4 1/4 equals roughly 2.5 hours. So this thing at full power can run for 2.5 hours with this battery. How long this thing will actually run really depends on a whole lot of factors. Air temperature, battery degradation, battery temperature, but this will give you an idea. Let's find out how long ice will last. It's about a 90-degree day, and we're gonna run this thing until the ice all melts. I'm using 20 pounds of ice and 1 gallon of water. I'm gonna switch from my power pack over to my solar generator for this test. It's a little bit overcast today, but we're still able to get some sun. Even with the clouds, looks like we're still charging. Inside my solar generator, I have a 35 amp hour lead acid battery. I have a 100-watt panel charging this thing, which should be plenty for this test. I'll put a link in the description below for the video for my DIY solar generator. Now I'll just turn it on and start the timer. While this test is running, this is the perfect opportunity to test how cold the air is coming out. I'll use this Inkbird Bluetooth thermometer and I'll sync it to the iPad. And then we'll track the temperature over time. I'll put the sensor inside the FlexForm hose. Here's some Flare 1 footage with the thermal camera. We can see that the pavement is 94 degrees and there's the air conditioner while it's running. So this thing's a lot cooler. Let's see the back here. The back is in the 60s and those are surface temperatures. Oh, you can see the motor in there. That's kind of cool. It's like X-ray vision. And there's the front of it. Let's do a little experiment with the thermal imaging. Let's see what it actually looks like when you stand in front of the ice cooler air conditioner. I'll step right in front here and we'll let it cool me off. And let's see if there's a difference in the color of my shirt. Now let's see what it does on my hands. I'll just run my hand across here for a few seconds. Feels cool to me. And let's look at the thermal imaging and see if there's a difference between this hand and that hand. This hand feels a lot cooler. This hand feels the same. So it definitely makes you feel cooler. Let's see how sensitive the thermal imaging is. Notice the heat signature of my hand as I move it across my chest. It's pretty crazy. We're just turning 2 hours and 30 minutes. I've added a meat thermometer inside the ice so that we could get a temperature of the ice. And looks like we're up to 41 degrees. So let's take a peek in there and see just exactly what's going on. And as I suspected, the ice is nearly gone. We're gonna turn this thing off and we're gonna crunch some numbers. We started our test with about 20 pounds of ice and a gallon of water. That lasted about 2.5 hours. At the beginning of our test, it was 90 degrees outside and now it's over 100. Siri, what's the humidity in Las Vegas today?
The humidity will be up to 32% today.
That's a lot for Las Vegas. Humidity matters because you might get some condensation. Humidity is one of the reasons why I chose a marine blower. It can withstand the moisture. Do you think humidity would cause a problem with a device like this? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's pull the Bluetooth sensor out and digest those numbers. Here are the results for the Inkbird Bluetooth sensor that we had stuffed in the FlexForm hose. Here's the chart for the duration of our test. At the beginning when we started, we were right at 90 degrees. And then over the first 15-20 minutes, we fell pretty sharply down to 66, and then 62, and then the lowest temperature that we encountered was right here at about 60 degrees, 59.99 degrees. This little bump is where I actually pulled the sensor out to check on it. And then we hovered right around 62, 64, and then we ended the test. What are some of the takeaways from the Bluetooth sensor testing today? Well, this cooler was able to blow air that was 60 degrees on a day where it got up to 100 degrees. And it blew air that was about 62, 64 degrees for the majority of the test, almost 2 hours. Most of the testing today gives us some great data points. If you want to see how I made this thing, check out these build videos. Does it work? Well, that's pretty subjective. I'm finding that it will cool an area, and if you're in that area, it will cool you. I'm glad you watched, and I hope you'll watch again.